Good morning. Good morning once again. She calls out to the man on the street, "Sir, can you help me? It's cold and I have nowhere to sleep. Is there somewhere you can tell me?" He walks on, doesn't look back. He pretends he can't hear her. Starts to whistle as he crosses the street. Seems embarrassed to be there. Oh, think twice, 'cause it's another day for you and me in paradise. Oh, think twice, it's another day for you and me in paradise. The classic words of Phil Collins from the world of music as he tries to stir the heart of a disconnected world to the realities of pain and trouble around us. Welcome to this session of Crosstalk, where we'll be speaking to two young adults who are making a difference by who they are and what they do. But before we plunge into the questions with Gibby Patmore Jr. and Sharon Matthews, I'm going to be introducing a little scripture because today we're talking about the cross and empathy. Please hear these words from the Gospel of Luke, its 23rd chapter. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at Jesus. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." I want to present an acrostic for you, and I hope we can have it on the screen shortly. It's a simple view there of the word empathy. And I broke it down to this meaning. Essentially, my pain actually taken to heart by you. Essentially, my pain actually taken to heart by you. So I'm sure you've asked the question, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? And putting it very simply, sympathy is feeling for you. Empathy is feeling with you. Get that? Sympathy is feeling for you. Empathy is feeling with you. Now, I think there are three levels of empathy, and I want to use a human body to illustrate it. One is head empathy, which is the cognitive empathy, where we process in our minds about the pain of someone. And then there's the heart empathy, which is the emotional empathy. You feel it in your heart. And then there's the actionable feet empathy, where what you processed in your head, you felt in your heart, you begin to do with steps that make a difference. One thing about Jesus is this, that Jesus, when he was nailed on that cross, had been traumatized by multiple court trials, the betrayal of friends, the denial of friends, the desertion of friends, and you find he was falsely charged. He was spat upon, they lashed him with a whip, and then, of course, they put the crown of thorns on him. The human body is going through its whips and lashes. There's change in the ECG levels there. There's change in the blood pressure reading. There's change in the blood sugar levels. There's a whole series of health things happening. And when they strike 6-inch Roman nails to pin your hands and your feet to the cross, you begin to lose blood. And then your gravitational pull to the earth is causing your lung and diaphragm to strain. It's a very miserable place to be in for 6 hours on a Friday on a cross. And just think about it. From there, Jesus is showing empathy. So I want you to see this slide, the empathy of Jesus on 3 categories. Empathy for those who hurt him. That's up there, the soldiers. Empathy for one who hurt others, the thief on the cross. And empathy for one who hurt for him. I see 3 categories of hurt, and Jesus specifically responding to these 3 categories. Think of this last slide, and then I'll be through with the story and into the conversation. The discomfort and pain of Jesus did not stop him from feeling the discomfort and pain of others. You probably heard me tell this story. It's the story of a little boy who was in a pet store. And he is so eager to buy a little pup. So he tells the man at the store, I've come to buy a pup, and I've got all this money I collected in my jar. And he kind of puts the money out there. And the man counts it and says, son, I'm so sorry. You don't have enough money for the price of a pup. And then he says, oh, no, you do, because I have a crippled pup that I can discount for you, and I can give you the pup. So the boy's all happy, and just then the man goes in to pick the pup up and then changes his mind. He says, this is a bad decision. A crippled pup needs more care than a normal pup. And why would I discount it and give it to a little boy who probably doesn't know how to handle this pup? So he comes up and tells the boy, I'm sorry, I can't do this for you. And the little fellow just sits on a bench and cries and cries and cries. He doesn't stop crying. And the man thinks, this is unusual. He goes and sits beside him and says, son, I'm so sorry for doing this. And then the boy looks up at him and says, sir, would you please wait a moment? And then he bends down and he pulls his trouser up. He didn't have his own foot. He had a prosthetic leg. And the boy said, sir, I'm a crippled boy. And no one can understand a crippled pup like a crippled boy can. And when you look at the cross, God was crippled to understand us. God was broken to connect with us. So, having said this for the introduction, here we are. Gibby, would you like to tell me something about where you were born, where you schooled and studied?
Thank you.
The mic, is it on? Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
You got it.
All right now. I strive to have a soft and gentle voice like Pastor Andrews. Thank you guys for having me this morning. I am New Cumberland through and through. I love this town. It's something that has always been a part of me. I wasn't born in New Cumberland. We used to live out in like off of Lewisberry Road, so not too far away, but I was destined for Redland before I came into Cedar Cliff territory. But with me being a third generation funeral director, my grandparents had already put down roots in New Cumberland and had been here all their lives. So I've been very much a part of New Cumberland from a very early age, and actually I've been down here from ages 1, 2, 3, 4 for band concerts. I've, lots changed in this room. Yeah. But I always enjoyed my time with everybody in this town, and it's really cool that my employment has come, full circle to be able to be with everybody that I've grown up to really love and respect in New Cumberland. I went away to Pitt undergraduate, and then I went to Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science a little later on, where I got my mortuary degree. I may have for a second been rebellious and thought that I didn't want to be in New Cumberland, but that changed very quickly. And here I am, and I'm extremely happy to be part of my family's business and to be here in New Cumberland.
Thank you, Gibby. Gibby serves as a supervisor at the Pathamore Funeral Home, one of the most compassionate, sensitive teams that work with people facing the end of life. A lot changed in the room, including the color of my beard in the last 10 years. It's a progress and work in progress. Sharon Matthews serves as a ICU nurse at the Penn State Hershey Medical Hospital. And Sharon, tell us something about where you were born and where you studied.
Hi guys, my name is Sharon, and I was born in the Middle East in Saudi Arabia. My mom was working there as a nurse at the time, and then my parents moved back to India, where they raised me for about 2 years, and I came to the States when I was about 6 years old. we settled down in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and that's where I was raised most of my life. I went to Lancaster Catholic, and then my senior year, my dad was a lawyer, my mom's a nurse, and I kind of wanted to follow both of their paths, but ultimately went down the nursing route, and I went to school at Penn State, up in State College. I moved back home then, and I worked 2 years in Lancaster General Health in their emergency department observation unit, and then I transitioned to Hershey Medical Center, where I work in the neurotrauma ICU.
Thank you, Sharon. Great to have Sharon with us. Miriam and I are so delighted. Sharon's engaged to our son Nihal, so that's a special family collection we have, and she has such dear parents. We love Benny and Fancy. I think they'll be watching this sometime, and my parents in India too are watching this time together, so it's really great. Let me start with you, Gibby. You meet people at some of the most painful moments in their lives. What have you learned about empathy from walking with families through grief?
I will tell you that being brought up in a family business like this, and my family life was immersed in the business, and not in a bad way, but my grandparents lived at the funeral home. So when we went to their house, it was, be quiet, there's something going on downstairs, there was a respect factor always. So these were things that I didn't really read into. It was just a way of life. So I kind of did grow up in what some people would think is a very sad situation, or dealing with heavy topics maybe at a young age, but I just had an understanding for that there was a beginning to life, there was an end of life, and that you treated everybody as well as you could all the way through. So empathy, you touched on the differences between sympathy and empathy. And I will tell you that early on as a funeral director, I've always been sort of a pleaser. I'd like to try and do what I can to help other people. But I always sort of used my lack of experiencing loss personally, or close loss, as like a superpower. So I always thought that my immediate family was intact. I had 4 grandparents for a very long time, into my 20s. So I always thought that was really cool, and that helped me as a funeral director. And what was very interesting, was that I think that my connection with people and things got a little deeper for me with my profession when I lost my grandfather, Gil, who was very much the patriarch of my family, who was the founder of the business that now that I'm co-owner of. So there were a lot of very deep and sort of untapped feelings I had when he passed away, and there's a level of connection that empathy provides, and again, I think that sadly a lot of times you have to go through very painful events on your own to be able to be on that same level with folks. But as much as I can tell you that's helped me, I find a lot of joy in what I do, helping other people, being on their level, trying to create some sort of structure for folks. And I can walk with you, I can try and be there for you. But underlying is still my profession, and the fact that I'd like to try and guide you and help you as much as I can too in those times.
Thank you, Gibby. He said something important, that the journey he had with losing his granddad kind of created a unique bridge to the pain of people. Sharon, you are somebody I interact with, and I always appreciate how you are a person of compassion, because sometimes when we talk to you at the end of a day, you're unable to forget. Does it happen to you? It looks like it does, about something that you experienced. You're very respectful of patient information with your HIPAA commitment, but I notice that you seem to carry it in your heart. So tell us something about your emotional, especially when you're in a situation that seems very helpless to you.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult not to bring work home with you. I think, when you see these patients come in, you never know exactly what you're going to see. It can be a 20-year-old who just got their dream car and was driving too fast and got into a car accident, or it can be someone's grandparent that they were having breakfast with and they had a stroke while they were on the table just enjoying breakfast. So it's hard when you meet these families and get to know them and the outcome just isn't what's expected. But in those moments, I think the best thing that I try to do is just be respectful of the patient themselves and try to understand a little bit about the patient. I ask family what they were like and about their family, just to make everyone in the room just like feel that their loved one was cared for. And my mom always taught me, like, when you clock into work, you give your whole heart to work. That's your main focus. You don't bring things from home to work. And when you clock out at work, you leave everything from work at work and you don't bring it to home. And I think that's always stuck with me, because it's not because you don't care about one thing over the other. It's just when you give your full attention to something, you truly like just give people what they deserve, and that's what matters.
Thank you, Sharon. It's good to see Sharon and her mom in this relationship as professionals, sort of sending energy and, wisdom between each other too. Gibby, how does your work help you understand the compassion of Jesus, especially the way he noticed and cared for people while he was suffering?
Well, I think that we are all striving to be this better version of ourselves. We're all looking to God and to Jesus for guidance, but Jesus being the human component of what our faith is based around, that helps me to be, I don't want to say a little easier on myself, but a little bit more understanding of the fact that this world is much more difficult than what we can set out to on paper try and do. So you have to navigate things like that. I'm a real person. As much as I would like to be the strongest person in the room for everybody, and a lot of times I can be, I cry just like everybody else. I don't just sleepwalk through my days. It's impossible to do that. And that's one of again, I get a lot out of what I do because I connect with people in that way. I try not to take my work home with me either. That's more difficult. It's a little easier said than done sort of situation. What Jesus would have done, I do try and at least think about that, whether I acted or not. Different days are better than others. But sometimes being in silence with people, letting them talk, that's one of the biggest things. And like I said, you guide them, but at the same time, you are there for them as an advisor. They're telling you things that they wouldn't tell the next person. They're very vulnerable, and I'm there to, I guess, just coax them through, what might be the most difficult day of their life.
Thank you, Gibby. The human Jesus, very big theology, very, very big part of the big word Christology that we study in seminary. And the fact that Jesus, for example, wept at the graveside of Lazarus, I think you brought up something very powerful, about how can I respond like Jesus would in every circumstance. A great response. Sharon, from time to time, you probably treat people who are very scared. They're in extreme pain, and sometimes the intervention that you have to perform as a medical team could actually cause them, at that moment, more discomfort. Have there been times at which you felt like crying, but simply had to hold back your tears and do your job in such intense moments? How do you balance empathy with staying focused on your medical task?
Yeah, like Gibby said, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all have our emotions. But I think in the moments where families are going through it or the patient themselves, I just remind myself that I'm there for a reason. I often, just look at God and I'm reminded that I'm here, like God put me into nursing for a reason, and I have to be brave and stand beside family and give them reassurance that everything's gonna be okay. I usually will try to do like 3 things for my patients that really help me. The first one is I try to be the best advocate that I can be. So if it is a painful procedure, I always make sure to ask the doctors, did we properly medicate the patient before we're about to do something? Is the patient aware of what is being done to them, as well as communicating with the family? If I see that a procedure is going to be really invasive, I usually will ask family to step out into the waiting room. And throughout the procedure, I try to step out and give them updates as much as I can. And lastly, as a nurse, you're not always the ones doing the procedures, but you're the one that knows the patient the best just because you're continuously spending time with them. So I make sure that my main priority is that everyone is following the patient's safety. So making sure that people are adhering to the training and the policies that are written for a reason. And I think, in those moments, you kind of have to step out and not have the emotions just so that the patient truly can get the best care and your judgment isn't misconstrued.
Thank you, Sharon. That's a part of the job that I would struggle in. I'm kind of a weepy pastor. Sometimes I weep when I feel it, and my procedure and process might go out of whack, but you can't afford to do that. So she really talked about letting the patient know what they're experiencing, the medical team. 2 is this very important bridge between an anxious family and loved ones and the process inside the room. Have you been there in the waiting room waiting? I've been there so many times, and you're watching that sign with the number, and sometimes you're just seeing they're stuck in the same place. You want some information, and when someone comes up and gives it to you, that is so, so important. Advocating for the patient, Thank you so much, Sharon. Let me get to Gibby again. In your experience, what are small, simple acts of kindness that make the biggest difference for a grieving family, Gibby?
Again, it is not a one-size-fits-all. Sadly, there's not just this checklist of things that you can go down through and make sure that you hit that allows you to be genuine with folks and to think about what they truly need. Sure, there are checklists. There are things that we have to do for people. But really, the biggest thing that you can do is to listen to them, to deviate from that list. There are people that are telling you exactly what they need, although they're not directly asking you for that help. And one of the biggest things is that, myself and there are 3 other funeral directors, we all have different gifts. So use those gifts. I enjoy writing. So if you have somebody that, boy, they can't stop talking about their loved one to you, they're telling you all kinds of funny stories, they're telling you, they're basically going through it all the way around. I try and write down as much as I can during that time, whether they know that I'm typing or not, and try and incorporate that somewhat. Give them some personality, embody what they were to them, to their grandchildren in the obituary. This is a lasting document that basically is historical in one sense, but it's also just a reflection and a testimony to this person's life. So why not let that be a lasting memory for these folks? If I like photoshopping or something like that, and that's one of the things that I do enjoy. AI's taken some of my thunder on these things. But they give you a picture that's a little less than what I would have asked for in terms of working with it, but I'll work with that photo. I'll try and enhance it. I'll brighten it. I'll do whatever else. And then I'll send it to them, or I'll print it out for the service even, where it's an 8x10. And, now they have something that's sort of tangible that they can take back with them, just listening to them, trying to figure out things that they might appreciate, and realizing what the next family may not appreciate. So listening is always your best friend. That's
a great lesson. Listening is always your best friend. I also suspect that you guys, when you work with the family, even take care of small things like the colors of the flowers they like to have. I've seen on the caskets, you guys have very specific, floral things. I believe you guys probably discussed that. One thing, Scott Sunday is here as well. Scott has been involved with the funeral home. I think Irv Keel used to also help with the funeral home. Anybody else who used to help with the funeral home? Thank you for your services too. One of the things I notice always, it's the Pathamos will always do this at the end of the interment. When we finish the last part at the cemetery, they'll always come and say, at this point the service is over, but the hardest days are probably ahead. Would you take time to reach out, to connect? And I always find, Gibby, that little thing that you guys do every time, it resets us because, I was telling Miriam, we just lost a very dear friend and we were in touch with his daughter every few hours. Now, after he passed, Grover, her passed away here, our lives have got into a little bit of a speed. And last night we were saying, wow, we dropped the ball. A few days, we haven't communicated back to Shruti. So what you say is so important, like to keep that touch going. Let me get back. I've got just two questions, one to Sharon and then the final one, and then we're through with this session today. But it's been so delightful to talk to you both. Just for a lighter moment, since you're from the profession, it seems this passenger was in a cab, and while the driver is driving through to the destination, the passenger just reached out and touched the driver's shoulder, and the driver just went berserk, screaming, yelling, almost taking that car off the path, and then paused and said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry because I've been driving a hearse for the last 25 years. This is the first day I'm driving a cab. So carry that one for your professional jokes.
Thank you, will do.
It's just a $1 offering to Trinity
That's
Church
perfect.
for that one.
Got breakfast and a joke.
Okay, Sharon. Empathy can be draining in high-stress environments, especially when you do the same job for years. What helps you keep your heart soft without burning out?
Yeah, empathy can definitely be draining, especially when you work in an ICU. There are moments where, the patient might appreciate what you do, but family doesn't always, or vice versa. So sometimes when leaving my job, usually one of my first phone calls is to my mom, and we like to just talk about our day and all the crazy stuff that we've done, and it just really helps me to just, take everything out. And I love to spend time with my friends and my family, so whether it's just, spending time with them at home or going out and just forgetting about work and all the sadness that I see at work, that definitely helps me as well. And recently, I've been loving just listening to worship music on my way back from work. I think it's another way to just let me vent, and when you're singing those songs out, I think you feel so many emotions, and just giving that all up to God can definitely just help take a lot out of your own plate. And once in a while, I'll treat myself to something like buying a new outfit or getting my nails done, so.
That's a really neat, practical response. But again, I love the fact that you share a relationship with your mom. Her mom is one of the most hospitable people we've known. She wants to keep feeding everybody. She's very generous. And it's just good that you both can talk at the end of a day, and just bear one another's burdens. I think it's important for all of us in stressed areas of work to have that friend or family that we can talk with. Thank you, Sharon. And of course, we all can treat ourselves to, I couldn't do the nail stuff, but I could do something else that would be fun to just relax, yeah? Okay, so we're on the last question today to both Gibby and Sharon. And I think you can join me in applauding them for their participation today. I so appreciated both of you being willing to be here at this table with me. And the last question to you, Gibby, is how has serving families in their hardest moment shaped your own faith, your understanding of a sense of calling to what you do?
For me, it is a little interesting. It's almost twofold, where my Christian values, I've always tried to work on those, to strengthen those. I was raised Catholic, but I've branched out from there in a lot of ways, and some of it is based on dealing with different faiths at my job. I have a very unique situation where I get to meet clergy, members of lots of different churches, and there is beauty to the fact that we all believe in the same thing as Christians. For me, personally, there is this one defining thing that basically presents itself through every set of arrangements that I make, whether it's loud or whether it's quiet. And it is the importance to that individual or to those folks that I'm helping of what that person's life was. You hear what they found to be important, and it's always, always, always those intangibles. It's always the time that they got to spend with that person, how that person made them feel. I never hear about that he gave me a car for this whatever, or it's never the showering of gifts. It is these human connections that we make with people that are the biggest deal in our lives. So all I can tell you is that has helped me to understand that yes, life is full of beauty and wonderful things. Death is very, very much a part of this, but that you are defined by how you treat other people, how you walk this walk. And I always found it interesting, especially when I was younger. I've come to realize that I understand it a little bit more now, but it is a true blessing to be with somebody who is near death and for them to be okay with it, for them to have accepted that, for them to be ready for that next part of their journey. It's unsettling for families when folks are not ready for that, and that's where I'd like to be. It's a nice theory, but I have a lot of respect, and it leaves me kind of in awe when people are okay with this life and what they've done here, and they're deep enough in their faith that they're ready to move on.
Great answer again. Pointer to relationships. Art Buchwald said this. He said, the best things in life are not things. And that's so powerful, the way Gibby told us. And as someone who has actually sat for a computed, I don't know how many hundreds of hours in my 37 years of being a pastor, it is more than hundreds of sitting beside people, sometimes 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 2 hours in a hospital room, watching them dying, and then seeing them leave. Their last breath on earth is their first breath in heaven. It is very, very humbling to be there. I was with an Indian doctor from the area who works with senior people, and she had Miriam and me for a dinner one night in her home. She does geriatric care, and she said when she heard I work in New Cumberland, she said, can I tell you 2 things about your people? I said, sure. She said, one is I find that they're very family-oriented, the people I serve from New Cumberland. The second, she said, is I'm always amazed at the peaceful way in which they die. And then she, as a person who's not a Christian, following an Eastern religion, said to me, Arun, I think it has something to do with your Christian faith. And I thought that was a powerful observation from somebody outside the circle, viewing how a Christian might die. So what you said is so true. When somebody is anchored in peace, then the family is so much at a better spot to accept it, isn't it? That's what you're saying. Thank you, Gibby. A last question to you, Sharon. Have you seen moments in the ICU or your hospital where a small act of compassion made a profound difference to a patient or a family? Tell us something about it.
Yeah, there are definitely small acts of compassion that can make such a big difference for a family. There's a lot of stories I have, but one of the most recent patients that I took care of, he was a young man, probably in his late 40s, and he had 2 children and a wife, and he was definitely, the one that went to work all the time and made money for the family. But unexpectedly, one morning, he was found to have a brain bleed from an aneurysm and was brought to Hershey Medical Center, admitted to my floor. And I was his nurse about the second day after he underwent a major surgery, and I really got to know his wife, who was there every single day. I mean, she would be there from 8 a.m. to about 7:30 when I would finish report. And throughout her stay, he stayed a little over a month, so I didn't always have him, but I made sure to always just treat her like a human being. I mean, when it would seem like he would get a break, something would happen, and he would have to go for another major surgery, and I could just see that she would feel so defeated. And in those times when I had a chance, I would just go into the room with her, and I'd pull a chair up next to her, and we would just talk about life. I mean, just like simple things that girls like to do, what she likes to do with her kids. And I got to also know like how the 2 of them met, and she definitely like always would tell me how much of a difference that made in her life. And it didn't take a lot for me to do that. I mean, when I had even 10 minutes, I would stop by and just let her know like, hey, I'm thinking of you, and I may not be taking care of him today, but I'm gonna check in as much as I can. Her little kids even came into work one day, and I was really upset because we were hoping that the patient would have had a good day, but he just wasn't feeling the best and had to get a feeding tube placed. But I was able to get the little girl, we have these like disposable stethoscopes, so we got her one of those, and she would help me like listen to her dad's heart. She helped me like push his meds through his feeding tube, and the mom always tells me how she still talks about that to this day. And now that patient has finally made it to rehab, and I'm still in contact with his wife, and she always sends me pictures of how he's doing, and always tells me like, if you're ever up in this area, like let's grab dinner or something. And that makes the job just, no matter how hard the days are, it definitely makes everything worth it. And so I think just small acts of compassion anywhere in life, I mean, ever since I've come to this church, just how people will say hello or ask me how my job's going. It's just small acts of just talking to someone that really can make a difference in their lives.
Thank you, Sharon. So well said. Again, I see that translated truly in who she is, and that is so beautiful. Mother Teresa, she said, not every one of us can do great things, but all of us can do little things with great love. Little things that make a difference. I'm seeing Sharon Marburger here. She goes to the hospitals with Coco and spends hours refreshing people in that interaction. So it's great to, share that love. I'm going to close by asking you to maybe close your eyes as I read for you these words of Isaiah, who wrote these words almost 700, 800 years before Jesus came. And he's actually describing what the Messiah will be like. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. By his wounds we are healed. Lord, thank you for this morning of conversation. Thank you so much for this time together. Thank you for reminding us, O God, that empathy is essentially my pain actually taken to heart by you. And I pray today a blessing prayer for Gibby Parthamore Jr. In all he is and what he does, he's making a difference, Lord, a profound, eternal difference in the lives of the people he's serving. Bless him, be his strength, and watch over their family and their work for this town and way beyond. Thanks so much for Sharon, Lord, and for her heart for people. Like the little girl with the toy stethoscope hearing her dad's heart. That's such a sweet picture. Thanks that in a very busy world we have people like Sharon who'd stop and want to make a real difference. I learned today from these two young people, and I pray that you'd make me a better human being because of the time I spent with them. Thank you for hearing us. In Jesus' name, amen. To close our session today, Jamie will run a 3-minute video. I hope it speaks to your heart. Once again, thank you so much, Gibby and Sharon, for being with us today.
I saw the ability of not rendering evil for evil, but showing patience and respect, beautifully demonstrated by a widow, Anne, who showed kindness when rebuffed by another. Anne was assigned to teach another woman in her ward, Betty, who had recently lost her husband. Betty was beside herself with grief and loneliness and pushed away any attempt by ward members to approach her. As Betty explained later, I was angry and frustrated, and I could not bear to be around others. At the same time, I longed for someone to break through to me. I just didn't know what to do. When Anne went to Betty with some flowers to express condolence, Betty pushed the door shut in Anne's face, loudly telling her that she did not want visitors, did not want or need anything from neighbors. Anne slowly walked home, wondering what she should do. After spending a few minutes praying and thinking about her own loneliness and sadness, Anne decided to return to Betty's home. After knocking, Anne was surprised when Betty opened the door. Anne pulled Betty into an embrace, held her tightly, and said, "I am so sorry you are hurting." Rather than pushing Anne away, Betty melted into Anne's arms and sobbed, all the while saying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." My father-in-law used to say that people need love the most when they are the least lovable. The ability to move past individuals' upset and anger comes when one sees that the expressed emotion is not necessarily the primary emotion an individual is experiencing. What allowed Anne to cut through Betty's angry exterior? I believe it was patience and respect. Patience to know that Betty's grief was masked as anger, and respect born of Anne's recognition of her own loneliness and sadness. While Betty did not appear to be very lovable, Anne recognized she needed love and compassion. I would be my brother's keeper. I would learn the healer's art.